and Social Services. You can find our next speaker in board meetings, council meetings, advocating for change, working with local community events. And he is with Con Amor Building Bridges and on the streets with our unhoused community, collaborating with Compassion Outreach. We are proud to welcome a young leader whose vision and heart reminds us that the future is already here and it's in good hands. Please give a warm welcome to Pablo Lopez.
That's perfect, thank you. That's great, thank you. Oh, don't worry about it. It's okay, I can just hold it. Okay. This is perfect for me. May 1st, May Day. Oh, a little closer, there we go. Okay. May 1st, May Day. Thank you everybody for coming. I'm so happy to be here. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I work with communities that experience trauma, and something funny is that I'm a little obsessed with Tetris, and the reason for that is because there's a lot of studies that show that Tetris is amazing at helping people work through trauma. After a traumatic event, playing Tetris helps us to work through those memories, to kind of figure out how to work through negative feelings, right? And so I spent a lot of time playing Tetris. I spent a lot of time thinking about Tetris to the point that I've become a little obsessed with not just the game, but the philosophy of Tetris, what it can teach us about life. I think about how sometimes in life it feels like blocks just fall continuously, right? How life keeps coming at us and we don't really have a way to stop it. How we want to create order out of the chaos of things, right? How we try to put order and organize things, line them up in 10 block beans, if you will, right? Make things disappear. And even though we keep doing it and we keep waking up and taking one step at a time, it just doesn't stop, right? And I think in a way that's a really beautiful metaphor for the idea of resiliency and for the idea of community. And on a deeper level, I think it's also this idea of what it means to be in solidarity. And so today, I want to talk a little bit about what that means, what we can learn from the labor movement, what we can learn about community, and what is happening at the federal and the local level. So, to begin, I want to talk about some of the labor heroes and what they've taught us, right? And I really kind of want to make a little amendment about that because I think it's important to say that I actually don't believe in heroes, right? I think one of the myths, one of the American myths is this idea of heroes, right? That somebody's chosen. We kind of grew up with these stories of like Spider-Man and Harry Potter, right? Like somebody is like called to action or is predetermined or whatever it be. And I don't honestly believe in that. I think heroes are really people that see an injustice and they say, I can't stand for that, right? I think time and time again, we see that people are just one part of a larger movement that keeps showing up. And I think that those movements are tremendous efforts of unity, of community coming together. And so when I think of those people, I think of people like Nelson Cruikshank, I think of Mary G. Jones, I think of people like Dolores Huerta. Nelson Cruikshank was a minister who worked with the elderly and the poor through church, right? I think of Mary G. Jones, who lost her husband and 4 children, and then in a fire lost all her belongings. I think of Dolores Huerta, who was a rural teacher in California, and as a teacher, she saw her students fight hunger, go to class with no clothing or lack of clothing and shoes, right? I see these people that would go through life and just knew that something was wrong, and when they saw these injustices in life, they said, no, something has to be done. And then through their will, they started to organize, they started to see other people. And I think that the movement collectively, that's what we call a heroic movement. I think that's what we strive for, right? And so when I think of all that, I think that Nelson Khrushchev did not pass Social Security and Medicare alone. I think that Mother Jones did not change child labor laws alone. I think that Dolores Huerta did not improve migrant workers' lives alone. I think all movements are heroic. I think that they're made of many pieces looking out for each other. I think that coming together and seeing that same exhaustion in each other's face, seeing that suffering, seeing that in that same disbelief of the reality that we experience and saying this cannot stand, something must change. That's what's heroic. It's a collective effort. It's imperfect and it's voluntary. The choice to be here today, the choice to occupy spaces uninvited, and most importantly, the choice to be there together is what makes us who we are. And so I also want to talk about community. And what is community? Community to me is the heart of any movement. It's this idea of solidarity. If injustice and outrage is what activates us to want to move, to want to work together, then I want to think that community is what feeds us to continue to do the work, right? And today we're here to do two things, to both celebrate the idea of workers' rights and to protest the assault on labor protection. And so I think of Martin Luther King Jr. when he said, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And so I want to ask you, who is your community? How big is your movement? A movement is only as big as its weakest link. A community is only as strong as its most vulnerable. And so today we have a clear vision. Today we're disgruntled, there's tension in the air, and today we know where we stand. But today, are we showing up here for us, or are we showing up for our neighbors? In previous weeks, were we showing up for the public safety and protect vulnerable populations resolutions? In the next couple of weeks, will we attend the homelessness committee meetings? When we want to care about our cause and our struggles, we feel mobilized. When we feel like we're in the right, we feel like we can make change. But I ask you, when you feel like somebody doesn't show up for you, how do you feel? And so I think it's important that in any movement, you think about the most marginalized, the most unprotected, and that you cast that shade on them. It's not about having power. It's about having power and giving it away. It's about having the protection and willingly giving it to the people that don't have that option. Having freedom, having safety is a privilege that not everybody has. If you can stand here today in solidarity, if you can stand here today and feel good and feel safe, then you have something to prove. And that is that you can do that for your community, that you can do that for those that cannot. And so I want to recognize some people that I see in the community today. I see people like Mark Dyken that does work with the homeless community. I want to recognize people like Brian Campbell, who did, in fact, make a statement for the LGBT community in that resolution. I have the utmost respect for people that make spaces accessible and who build community, because the movement is a heart that needs to plan for growth. Any movement that just critiques and attacks doesn't plan for the future. Destroying is easy, building is hard. And so I hope that today, as we continue to move forward and we continue to think about what we need, we continue to make space, not just for the people that are here today, but for the people that need to be here tomorrow. And the last thing I want to talk about, and this main thing that I think we're all here for today, is this idea about the federal cuts, right? The federal cuts. We know there are massive federal cuts incoming and are happening and have already happened. Cuts to Medicaid, affecting 72 million people. Cuts to housing programs, social services, public health, and much more. Our community is rural. We rely on federal and state monies. We rely on U.S. Forest Service funding to maintain trails for tourism and fire safety. We have elderly populations that rely on Meals on Wheels, which is literally life or death for many. The Trump administration is sentencing many to make a choice between feeding themselves and basically not, right? These are things that are on the chopping block. Our public health, our public works, are many programs that rely on grant monies, right? When these grant monies expire, those operations cease, and we have to ask, how do we continue? Where do we find the funding for this? And we have to ask, where's this money going? To tax cuts. It's the same story over and over again. Reagan administration, the Bush administration, tax cuts, trickle-down economics, 50 years of research, over and over again, right? All we know from 50 years is that all it does is create inequality. It helps 1% of the population accrue wealth. It does not help the middle class. It does not help the lower class. All it does is create inequality. We call it the zombie idea. Why? Because it is the most failed policy in American politics, but it just keeps being revived by a few people, right? Do we want to support that? At a time where our freedom, our health, our economic security is at stake, we are tired of the same old thing. We're ready to make change. We want money for healthcare and public welfare. Human needs, not corporate greed. We need to make our voices heard, call your representatives, make those phones ring. Tell them we are not satisfied. It may not feel like one call can be enough to change things, but one call is showing up. It's part of the collective effort. It's making part of that movement. All movements begin one step at a time, and no one does it alone. We need to show up for each other. Sierra strong, Foothill proud. We need to have heart and compassion to think about our neighbors. To those on the margins, we need to show up for them. Be aware of what is happening at the federal level, but also what's happening locally, what we can do for them. Remember that life doesn't stop for anyone. The stress and the trauma is going to hit all of us, and we need to organize the best that we can. Even if one of us is missing from that chain, even if one of us is excluded, we fail. But unlike Tetris, this isn't a game.